Since the dawn of humanity, we have utilized projectiles to aid ourselves in hunting and defending. The crossbow, a bridge linking bows of the past to rifles of the future and modern-day firearms, a major upgrade compared to the flintlock pistols and the muskets of the past. While these two weapons were created hundreds of years apart, they both have one key similarity: the way the weapons function. The crossbow and modern-day firearms both shoot projectiles at whatever they are pointed at, while firearms use controlled explosions, which we will get into later. The crossbows use a certain pulling force to help propel an arrow or bolt at their target. And that force is tension. The way the crossbow is put together utilizes tension within the crossbow string or rope to help launch the bolt forwards. By pulling back the string or rope in the crossbow, we create tension within it, and by locking that tension in place with a locking mechanism, we are able to capture that tension and are able to store it until it is time to fire the crossbow. This ingenious upgrade to the old bow was first introduced in ancient China around the year 700 BC and has been a popular weapon for many centuries after its initial induction. This originally was not in the script because I forgot to mention it, but here's another fun thing to know about the crossbow. When I first stated this, I only mentioned that tension was in the string, but tension also exists within the crossbow body itself, in that when you pull the string back, you also pull the crossbow, or at least you bend the crossbow in such a way that it creates even more tension, and that tension is also helping in propelling that bolt or arrow forwards. Nowadays, and also in the recent past, there have been a lot of firearms that were created, and honestly, there's just too many for me to remember, figure out, and research. So, for this topic, well, for this video, we're going to be focusing on basically the simplest of firearms, and the ones probably most people are going to be familiar with. So when I talk about firearms in this, think of the most generic one possible. Let's picture a generic handgun. Everyone knows about those. Everyone really knows how they work. Not really. I didn't before I researched this, but now I do. And I can say that they're far more advanced compared to their predecessors, like the musket or the flintlock pistol. Utilizing controlled explosions, firearms are able to launch their projectiles at a high initial velocity and are able to hit their targets from a very long distance. These controlled explosions are actually set off inside the gun after the trigger is pulled. Typically, after the trigger is squeezed, it launches a spring-loaded pin, which in turn penetrates the loaded bullet, igniting the gunpowder within the bullet and then setting off that controlled explosions that we were discussing earlier. This, in turn, expands the air inside the gun and launches the bullet forward. Some of the key physics at play here lie within the spring-loaded pin. The spring-loaded pin within the gun, before firing, is storing elastic potential energy. After the trigger is pulled, the spring is sort of unrestricted now. It's able to get back to its equilibrium position. And once the trigger is pulled and that happens, the elastic potential energy is converted into kinetic energy. And as the spring goes back to its equilibrium position, it also pushes the pin towards the bullet. This, in turn, as we discussed earlier, will eventually set off the gunpowder, creating that controlled explosion, and will eventually lead to the firing of the pistol. As for the comparison between the two weapons, well, let's say we have a hypothetical situation where I arm 100 people with a handgun and another 100 people with a crossbow, and you tell me who wins. That's right, physics wins. Physics always wins, because physics is everything. But if we really took a look at how each weapon worked as we had done, you can definitely see some striking similarities. The main one being how the projectile travels, sort of. But then again, that's how all projectiles travel, so. Huh. They were both revolutionary inventions of their time. The crossbow, the pistol, or any firearm really, evolving from a normal bow to a crossbow, or from, let's say, you can even say a crossbow to a handgun. It's a big step. And these big steps are what drive civilization forward. As technology advances, it's inevitable weapons will start advancing. And you can definitely see that throughout history. Thanks for tuning in. This is Stephen Jin, maker of this amazing presentation. Exiting.